Welcome to Startup Wins. Twice a month, we share real stories and smart tips. Subscribe and join the journey.
Welcome back to another episode of Startup Wins. We are lucky to have one of my friends here, Beth Massa, on the show.
Hi, Brandon. Thank you. Thrilled to be here.
Appreciate you being here. So before we jump into the show, I thought maybe we would kind of learn a little bit about what Beth is doing. But we used to be alumni of this little company called Amazon that now supposedly is ubiquitous throughout the world for all these products you can order like within hours, it seems like in some places. I'm actually curious how it is in Europe because that's where Beth is here. So Beth, actually where are we speaking to you from?
I'm in Amsterdam in the Netherlands.
Oh,
Amsterdam.
Amsterdam. I mean, you were in the Seattle area quite a bit, right?
Yeah, I was. I moved to Seattle in 1996 because the city was just so beautiful. I couldn't believe that people actually lived there. So I was like, I could live here too. So I just moved, and then I got this temp job at this little startup called Amazon. The stars sort of aligned. And then I had that feeling again about 10 years later when I visited Amsterdam for the first time. So I trusted that feeling. And I think that my relationship with Seattle was changing, maybe not so much in a good way. And in Amsterdam, it was just this life that I always dreamed of living was just here waiting for me to find it. So we moved and never looked back.
Yeah, no, that's so cool. I mean, honestly, we're gonna dive into that. But before we do, if you don't mind, we're gonna maybe let the listeners hear a little bit about what you're doing. What are you doing? What is this company that you're basically building? And yeah, let's start there.
Well, we have a startup here called Ozarka. Ozarka aims to bring an end to single-use food packaging worldwide, and that includes everything from every sort of material that is like a linear waste stream. While we would love to take on the bottled water industry first, when you're a tiny little startup, you're not going to get very far trying to defeat that Goliath. So the lane that we picked was ready to consume and made to order food. So we were working with caterers and restaurants and food trucks and festivals to replace disposables with reusable packaging. And there's a whole system to keep it all in circulation. And now we're moving on to the phase where we're actually thinking about not just the packaging, but the food that goes in it. So we are building a new takeaway and delivery model that's so different than the current experience. We like to say it's the opposite of today's takeaway and delivery. From a sustainability standpoint, customer service standpoint, the margins that we're charging restaurants is half what they're used to right now. And our margins are, in spite of the slash in commissions, 600% higher than the industry standard. It's very hard to correct course when you're a large multinational company like the big guys.
Right.
And so we were like, we're in this great opportunity to build it right from the ground up. And that's what we're doing right now.
Oh, wow. Well,
that company's called Zeddy, so it's a separate brand.
Okay, interesting. So, Beth, this has been I imagine, a very interesting entrepreneurial path. I mean, you said you got some contract work at Amazon, probably. What did you do at Amazon again?
Like most people, I did a couple different things. So, I actually, after graduating from college, intended to be a music journalist and also living in Seattle. So until Rolling Stone called me up and offered me a full-time job, because that just happens. I got a temp job at this little startup called Amazon, in the current customer service department. So that's where I started for like the first couple of months. Then I was one of the first 3 editors indeed hired in the music store, and then went on to do some product management. I did the Target.com relationship, if you remember that back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
Then went back to sort of merchandising management for music and software and video games. And that was the last role I had before I moved halfway around the world.
And did you do that via Amazon's dollars, or did you do that on your own, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, no, I did it on my own. Moving to Amsterdam again wasn't a professional decision. It was a personal and emotional one. And so I needed to find a job. And it took about 2 years of networking while I was still at Amazon to get an offer. And just by sheer coincidence, the offer I got was from Microsoft, even though
Mm.
I'd never worked at Microsoft in Seattle. And so they just had a very like compensation in Europe, especially in the Netherlands, is incredibly generous compared to what Americans are used to. So, I think most Americans think of Europe, they think of incredibly high taxes. And while that's true, there's another side to living here, which is really, really wonderful. So it was a very soft landing for me to move and then also to depart from Microsoft, which is actually a key part of my startup story as well.
Yeah, could you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, sure. So I don't mean this to be self-deprecating, but what happened was I was hired to manage content for a site that spoke to small businesses. The management team said, yeah, hey, fancy Amazon girl, that thing that Amazon does where they're like, people who bought this also bought that. Can you build us a recommendation engine for content as well? And I was like, yeah, but I need a couple of years and like several $1 million budget and a team. And they're like, right, yeah, you have 6 months and 75,000 euros. What can you build us? And then I was like, oh no, like these people have no idea what it takes to build a world-class website. And so for the next 10 years, Brandon, I just kind of floated from team to project, trying to find my place. I like to joke that I was sort of the like diversity house pet. I think they just sort of liked having me around. And my last role there was what I think we would call an entrepreneurship. So this was right when Azure and cloud computing was starting to come onto the scene. And I realized that we had an untapped market, and that untapped market was the academic research community that have huge compute needs. Everything is on premise. So I said to my bosses, like, this is huge. Like, let me take a shot at this. And amazingly, they did. But I knew that the role had a timestamp on it because a subsidiary has a very short tolerance for business development. And so I'd said to them, this is going to take 5 years. I am not going to change my tune when you guys start saying like revenue, revenue, revenue. It's going to take a while. And indeed, I knew after 2 years they were going to start getting itchy. And all I could do was stay consistent with my story and knowing that this was probably going to be my last role at Microsoft. Like, great company, no hard feelings, but again, just organically coming to an end.
Mm.
Then, of all the researchers I was talking to, of course, being the Netherlands, there's a lot of water management research. And there was this group that was studying microplastics in the ocean. And this was years before this was headline news. And I was like, what do you mean there's microplastics in the ocean? We're all recycling. There's a problem. And they're like, yes, actually, recycling's a lie. Everything's being dumped into Southeast Asia and the global South, and it's a catastrophe. And for a variety of reasons, this particular environmental problem like really captured my attention.
Mm.
And I'm going to try and truncate the story, but to the point where I thought, I know so much about this now, it feels like a moral responsibility to participate in a solution. So I sold my house in Seattle to bootstrap the company, and Ozarka was born. Yeah, but the soft landing part. So when you have what's called an off blueprint role, which means it's a specialized role that's not a part of the org chart, those roles, when it's reorg time, are very vulnerable to being removed. And I knew that there was a very high chance that that was going to happen to me. So I strategically decided, well, I'm not going to start the startup until I'm made redundant, because in the Netherlands, when that happens to you, you have 6 months to find another role within the company on full salary. So that's your only job, is to find a new role. If you find a new role, everything's just resets. If it's a role outside the company after a month, you still get the 6 months of full pay and your severance, which is usually about a year's salary.
Oh, wow.
So it was like a very soft landing for me to start this company. Yeah. So thank you, Netherlands, for your generous socialized compensation packages, because it made starting Ozarka a lot easier.
I think I'm going to be packing my bags here pretty soon to
I mean, it's
join
crazy.
you.
Yeah.
I made the move to Austin, assuming that it was a better environment, but now what you've just told me just outdoes anything in the United States. So, I mean, I had another friend who's talking about Malta, and we were doing a little bit of research around that. kind of
Yeah.
fascinating.
Malta's a great place to sock your money if you want to retire in Europe. Like, I don't think they tax your pension at all if your pension's coming from the US. There's a couple of countries in Europe that have these kind of lucrative tax schemes for expats.
I see. Interesting. So how long has this journey been so far? When did you start Ozarka? And yeah, tell us a little bit about the years of trials and tribulations and hopefully lots of successes.
It's been really hard, actually, Brandon, because we started in 2018. Again,
Mm,
I had a little bit of capital of my own. It was a bit of a cushion. So we spent that first year just kind of staring at the wall, going, okay, what's the business? What's the business model? Where do we start? It was a struggle. And then after a while, you start realizing that you're not asking the same questions or fighting over the same questions over and over again, that you're asking new questions. And once we finally got that figured out, we got some angel investors to kick in some pre-seed. We bought our first batch of reusables inventory and started to procure some clients.
mm,
And things were going really, really well. And then, it's coming. COVID shut everything down for 2 years.
mm.
And that was really hard because that was 2 years of like no revenue and everything's going chunk, 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 chunk. And then what happened after that is everyone is spooked because in the hospitality industry, 1 week was completely different from the next. Are we open? Are we not? Is this gonna, even though COVID sort of officially ended, no one was feeling secure that it wasn't going to continue to be the start and stop. And so that took like even another year to sort of get that rolling. And then our largest kind of bread and butter catering client moved into a larger facility, which was great for us because they were
Mm.
growing, we're growing. And then the entire facility that they just moved into burned to the ground and they stopped for a year, which means like we stopped for a year.
Oh my
So
God.
at that point, we were like, that on top of the fact that that my company is founded by a female, which is me, watching our two white guy male competitors get tens of millions of euros in investment when we're struggling to put 300,000 together. It's just been really, really hard. And so the stage that we're at still is, Ozarka is still a small business and it will continue to remain that way until we get the financing that we deserve. And yeah, it's been a battle, but the reward is the community, the
Mm,
other female founders that are in this fight with me, the alliances there, the commitment we have to each other there, the support we give each other when, you feel like crying for the fifth time that week is not something that I would trade. And I almost wonder, looking back on all of this, while my company will be a success, if maybe the main point of it wasn't the company in and of itself, but to be a voice and a champion for female founders. It may be both, but that role has become just as important to me as running a business.
I love that, Beth. As I mentioned in the conversation before we started recording today, I had two female friends who were, they've done many different things, but they saw the discrepancy, at least in the United States, but probably it sounds like it's prevalent throughout the world, is that women get what, 2%, maybe at most 5% of the 100% pie of all the venture capital that exists. Do you know what the latest numbers are? How are those numbers in Europe?
Yeah, it's still 2%. And so the counterpoint people will throw up is that, yeah, but only, 13% of companies are founded by women. And then the counterpoint to that is, but yeah, female run businesses have like 50% higher increase in revenue and profit margins than male founded ones. But my experience has been as follows. If we're pitching to some investors, of course they'll ask about traction. And for me, traction means ARR. For my male counterparts, traction can mean any number of things, including like signups to a newsletter. And so what happens is that you'll hear me repeat the saying that's like the two white guys, two white guys, two white guys that are always showing up with my feed celebrating their new round will get this money. They'll blow through it in record time on the brink of bankruptcy. And then what happens is that they get even more money than the first round because they learned. But what they learned are things that I've known for 20 years plus, my entire career. That's what's so frustrating. Or they start out with a model that we know is not going to work. They get all their money and then they pivot to something completely unrecognizable. And so then the criticism for female founders rolls around that, well, one of the reasons that people don't want to invest in us is because female founders tend to be too risk averse. And I have to explain to them, well, we have to be, because our runway is all we've got. And if we screw up, that's the end of the line. Like, we don't want to be risk averse, but you've given us no choice. So the message I'm trying to get out there to the VC world is like, I'm not too early. I'm not too early talking to you with my, small ARR. You're too late. Like, you have to start taking this jump with female founders if, the status quo really wants to make a difference. I don't think that they do. That's not what I've experienced over all these years. So yeah, that's why I decided to start my own fund, but that's a totally different project.
No, I definitely, I don't know if I want to say empathize, because obviously I can't empathize, but definitely sympathize. But then that sounds bad.
It doesn't sound bad.
No, it's okay.
It's not an impossible story to understand. So no, I appreciate that.
Yeah, we could do the typical raise. We can do everything that most venture capital firms do. But my co-founder, a woman who I've known for 35 years, college classmate, and I are just trying to change the whole ethos of the system. And one of the biggest initiatives is to make sure that women get the right amount of financing to make it to the next level. In our initial recruitment, we had about 123 applicants for 3 positions. And guess what? Like 99, I'd say 97% were men. And we had 3 or 4 amazing women, by the way, amazing women. Unfortunately, the first woman had family issues. We offered her a position, but she had family issues. So she tended to the family. So what's that mean? Women care, right? Women care about the right priorities. And our priority is the same as hers, family first. We are still committed to probably hire the 6th and 7th person as being female, so that at least we get a certain percentage of women so that we can make these decisions. But I sympathize, but also I hope that we can work with you and supporting you. As you know, we introduced you to a fantastic 7-time founder. And so we hope that relationship will blossom into something. So I will get off my soapbox and just say, damn it, let's fix this problem together.
Yeah, and it's so thank you for that. And the insight that you've unearthed there is that it's basic human nature that we sort of gravitate toward our own. And this was a revelation I had when I was still at Microsoft. I'd always been, working predominantly in a male-dominated industry, and I was very comfortable with that. I've worked with wonderful men. I've also had bosses that were bullies, both men and women. But I've been really lucky that I've had so many wonderful relationships with men in my life. I'm not a man basher, but it is very difficult to try and understand a bias when you haven't personally experienced it. And that's why so the insight that I had to finish the story at Microsoft, I'm on a university somewhere. In my professional experience, most of the women I worked with were in traditional women departments like PR or HR, marketing. I walked into this classroom one day, and it was a software engineering classroom, and it was all guys. And this isn't going to sound so nice, but they were just like your typical, like really geeky, sweet boys, but just so like nerdy, geeky software engineers. And I was like, you know what? If I was like a cool, fun, hip, smart girl, these are not my people. This is not my tribe. These are not the people that I would want to spend the next 4 years of my life bonding with. And it was at that moment that I realized, oh no, like this is an entire like lucrative industry, assuming AI doesn't wipe it out, that yet another generation of women are totally missing out on. So that's when I had that epiphany, like we need to build our own culture in our own way, on our own time and in our own terms, just like the geeky guys did in like the 70s. That was great for them. It was great for their culture. It made them incredibly wealthy, the wealthiest guys on earth. But to ask them to all of a sudden pivot to something that's so like epigenetically deep in them to overcome a bias, it might be in the time we need it to happen, too much to ask. So again, that's why I'm like, ladies, come on, we need to do this for ourselves, just like those guys did. But we need allies like you to help accelerate that process. So I don't come at this with any sort of like vitriol toward men. Maybe, not as much as maybe one might assume.
Yeah. So it sounds like you have an organization, or you're lobbying for these efforts through a vehicle. Is that correct?
Yeah. So it's a little bit of fun, but one day I was dropping off some clothes and items at they call it a kringloopwinkel here in the Netherlands, like a charity shop, or, like Goodwill type place.
Mm-hmm.
And off the corner of my eye was this clothes rack. And on the clothing rack, I saw this t-shirt, and it said, I should have worn it for our interview. It said, "Need money, not friends." And I just thought that was so funny. And I kept looking at it, and I gotta buy that t-shirt. And so I wore it. And then I posted this comment on LinkedIn after I'd gotten yet another rejection from a VC. And I said, "I'm done. I'm going dark, for all the reasons that I've just discussed. We need to do this for ourselves. And so I'm going to start my own fund called Need Money, Not Friends." And it's also a social movement. So I sell the t-shirts, and then any woman who wants to express how frustrated they are with the funding landscape can like wear the shirt and talk about their story on social media. That money will go into the proceeds from those t-shirts will go into a pool. And then I'm also inviting people who want an equity stake to maybe put in a larger ticket. My goal is to raise 10 million euros, which is a really small fund, but it's a start. And yeah, the idea behind Need Money, Not Friends isn't that we don't need friends, is that we have enough friends. You're an accelerator. You want to be my friend. You want me to pay for your friendship, but don't need your acceleration. Don't need your advice. Don't need your mentorship. I need money. And so that's the whole, that's the ethos behind the slogan.
I can't wait to jump on your train there. You definitely got a new follower, or you got a new member of this group, or whatever it is. And I'm happy to help you with the marketing part of it. I mean, not that, I'm sitting here
Yeah, I always say yes to help. Anybody who says we don't need your help, I think that's the wrong response. I say yes to help always. So this is a really nice story, actually. So in the early days, I did have two advisors. They were both men, and they gave me amazing advice that I share to other people who are just starting their startup at the very, very beginning. The first bit of advice is start small so you can start fast. That doesn't mean you have to reduce your ambition. When I had mentioned to you, like we stared at the wall for a year, this guy kind of got us out of that. We were in what's the term, analysis paralysis. And he said, if I told you had to start Ozarka in 6 weeks, what would you do? And that really got us going. It was just like, okay, let's just have this tiny little silly business and just start. So that's really critical. And then the other great advice I got was, the advisor said, "Beth, you have no idea how big your network actually is." He said, "Write down the name of every single person you can think of your whole life, if starting with a kindergarten teacher to a manager at work, every single person you can think of that gave you a compliment or encouragement or seemed to think you were interesting." And he said, "Ask them for money." And so I did that, and I took a giant breath, because that's scary. As a result of that, I raised 240,000 euros in 23 hours.
Wow.
Now, I wish it was, I wish it was always that way, but it included a lot of senior managers at Amazon that had just noticed my work here or there, or we had a 30-second conversation in an elevator where they gave me some praise. Like any little moment, I wrote those guys down, and some of them ended up being my investors. Yeah.
And let me ask, because some people who are not experienced with the whole angel raising or angel investments phase of building a startup, how did you approach that? Did you just email these people cold? Did you do it individually? What was your wins? What were the wins that basically helped you get that amount of money?
I emailed them cold individually. So I sent them all like the template body of the email, sandwiched it with, a personalized note to them, acknowledging my gratitude toward our relationship. All about building relationships. I'm sure that that's not new to anyone, but you're the one that has to build those relationships, and you're the one that has to be brave enough And also keep in mind, it feels good to help someone.
Mm.
A smart angel investor will never invest money that hurts if they lose it. So that's also something I have to kind of keep in the back of my mind, because my angels have waited so long for Ozarka to get going. But it's not, I think once you remember that, if people don't believe in it and they can't afford it, they're not going to be offended that you're trying to do something amazing, and they're going to be complicated that or complimented. I think, at least I would be, that you thought of them to kick in. So you just, yeah, you just have to have a little bit of faith in humanity when you're making those first initial contacts.
And unmasking without names, the data behind it, was it mostly Amazon folks that were able to fund, or were there outside of your Amazon network, can I ask?
My anchor investor, my two biggest investors are actually, one was my mom's neighbor. My mother actually also moved to Amsterdam to spend her retirement here with us, and her neighbor was American. And my mom's like, "Yeah, I think that he works for this like chip company or something." I'm like, "NVIDIA?" She's like, "Oh yeah, maybe." I'm like, "Okay, can you introduce me?" And so they took a leap of faith with us, and then he's had a whole bunch. He's worked for all the tech startups you could think of in Silicon Valley, and his wife is unbelievably supportive and incredible as well. And then they brought in two other investors for us. So that's another thing that can kind of get the ball rolling. A lot of angels will invest. I think he brought in, no, I know for sure he brought in three other investors for us. So that one investor turned into four, one of them being our absolute anchor, where the majority of our funding came from a single individual through him.
Okay.
So that's kind of how the game works.
When you were raising, I imagine you were already familiar with the cap table and how this fund, or rather this investment, would translate into equity. This is long-term equity, right? The liquidity event may not happen for years, down the
Right.
road. I'm curious, how did you come to whatever percentages that you decided to give them, and do you regret any of that? Any learnings from there? I mean, any thoughts around that whole process?
We've been, I think, with our cap table, we've made the right decisions. I still have, vast majority of the shares in my name. Most VCs would think that our valuation is too high.
Hmm.
And that's kind of the catch 22 that we're stuck in right now, because I'm not going to compromise on that. I think that the valuation is appropriate considering the potential of the company. We're never going to down round our angels. I mean, you say never, but it would kill me to have to do that. And that's absolutely never my intention. But we do have an open round right now.
And is it is it,
Um,
is it Europe? Is it Europe investors mostly?
it's Europe. Yeah. So if I knew now what I knew then, I would never have started my startup in Europe, and especially not in the Netherlands. They are ultra risk averse. And so what's considered like a lunch tab in America is it considered a huge investment for these guys. So that's been like another challenge that we're facing. Most of my investors are American. The ones who are Dutch know me personally, like very well. But yeah, that one is really tough. So we've got a couple of things that are, adding to like the challenge ladder. That's definitely something to overcome, because I know that we've made the right decisions all the way along. We're starting to see some of our other competitors going out of business, which was something we predicted would happen to them. And I'm very proud of the strategic decisions that we've made that have kept us going, and that we're still here and we're still as committed to ever to making the company a success. But yeah, I'm frustrated by how some of the bad luck that we've run into has held us back a couple of years.
Yeah, that building burning down is just
That sucked. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. How big is the team today?
Hiring people in the Netherlands is very risky, because it's very difficult to fire people, and then you have to pay the generous severance. You also get taxed for employing people, so it's actually sort of a penalty. But in this society, there are so many people that just prefer the flexibility of having their own independent businesses, that those are the people that we've always worked with. But we've worked with the same people for so long, it really feels like a team. But they send us invoices. That just works brilliantly for us.
How about the wins? What are the good things about the Netherlands beyond quality of life? Was there anything that did kind of help, or you say you wouldn't do it again in the Netherlands, but are there reasons why anybody should start in the Netherlands, just out of curiosity?
I mean, if you're a fintech, and that's the reason that this market is flooded with fintechs, that the unicorns here have all been fintechs, payment provider services, things like that. If you're an impact company, it's a pretty nice place to be. And this is why I had mentioned before we started the conversation that I like to think of Ozarka as C to B to B, because when we were like B to B, we didn't have to do any outreach or marketing because all of our catering clients came to us because their customers were saying, hey, we love your food. We're sick of the packaging waste you're dumping on us. Fix this. So they come to us in a panic saying, do you have the reusables? I'm like, yeah, we got you. It's cool. And that has always been the case. And remember when I told you about when that advisor said start small so you can start fast?
Yeah.
Well, how we did that is we threw up a quick takeaway and delivery site. We recruited a couple of caterers and we got in some customers and we said, hey, order food, but we're going to serve it to you in reusables, but we're not going to tell you what the container type's going to be like. And then we want to get your feedback. So sometimes they would get silicone or they get glass or they get aluminum, and because the product or the service was about reusables, right? Mm-hmm. And so it was doing really well. And we got lots and lots of orders right away. And we got the data that we needed so quickly that we were able to shut the site down. Mm-hmm. And the people were really disappointed. They were like, well, you're shutting it down. Well, we really love this. We're like, yes, but everybody tells you as a startup, you have to stay focused, or we've got our roadmap and we're going to start with the reusables first. And looking back on it now, we just didn't have the confidence to see what was right before us, that all of the things that people thought were going to be complicated or complex, or that customers are lazy and never going to return the reusables, like none of that happened. And that's really where the Amazon experience comes in. Every single time we've put a hypothesis around customer behavior, we've always been like 180 degrees wrong, which is so delightful and such a relief. Like, oh, I'm so glad we're testing this, we're prototyping this. But in that instant, we weren't able to see like the thing we thought was the hardest was actually the easiest. It was right there in front of us. And that was another thing. So when we shut that down, the caterers were actually much more reticent to switch to reuse until they're in a panic situation. They had no desire to switch to reuse until they're threatening to, have their business potentially lost from frustrated customers. And that's still continuing to be the case. And so I always think to myself, if we would have just recognized that was a pretty frictionless opportunity or experience, where would we be right now? I know where we'd be. We'd be where I think we're going to be 5 years from now. We would be there now. I would probably be like acquired at this point. So if I ever start another startup after this, if this ever happens again, I'll be able to catch it. Our customer's always been the consumer. The consumer is so ready for getting rid of waste. They're so used for the connecting to their communities through food. But the bottleneck is the caterer and the restaurant, for very good reasons, by the way. But that one hurts. That one really hurts, but it's okay.
Well, the business sounds very interesting, to be honest. And obviously you have a pitch deck and you have all the different things. You understand the whole startup world, everything, it sounds like. If you got a chance to, let's hope that this is being listened to, potentially some of your investors, what would be your pitch to them, and how much would you want today?
Well, we're looking for, again, a modest amount by American standards, an enormous amount by European standards. We're looking at 3 million. It would still be something that looks like a bridge, or seed 2-3. It's not quite VC. We would probably do it still with SAFE. But in exchange for that, we're very comfortable in receiving that funding in tranches based on hitting revenue milestones. So we just need that because, again, like while we've kept the team really small, we do need to bring on a business development manager. This is somebody, actually, she's from Texas and she's American and she's an absolute powerhouse. We need to put her on salary and really, really get this going. And then we've actually also just developed our own tech that's image recognition technology. So a little bit of AI and AI light in there. That's how we process and track our containers. Everybody else uses RFID and QR codes. Ours is much more robust. So we need to put some money into proliferating the hardware aspect of that. And then, the marketing and telling the story. So at this point, we're at the gate, like, the model is ready, the restaurants are ready, the customers are ready. The tech's been built. We're ready to go. It's just that typical story. We just need the growth. We need to keep the lights on, and we'd be on track within like 18 months. We think we can bring in 10 million in revenue, but I want this to be $1 billion business. My goal is to take 50% market share in 3 years in the Netherlands. And no European can hear that. They think that's absurd. It actually happened in the US because our former colleague, Chris Payne, was the CEO of DoorDash. And that's exactly what he did in the US market. And not by coincidence, his strategy is exactly the same as mine because we're cut from the same cloth. I didn't even have to like research how DoorDash did it. I was like, oh, yeah, looks like they did the same thing we're planning on doing. Like it's all there. We just need to be able to keep the lights on while we get the wheels in motion. So yeah.
Well, you hit on something that everybody's talking about these days, AI. How's that impacted you guys? There's kind of a big arms race out there right now with LLMs, and there's all kinds of other things that are going on, and people are evaluating the different things to incorporate in their organizations. But because you're a smaller team, I imagine you're using a bit of AI. Can you tell us a little bit about how you're leveraging it?
So on a personal level, I've always believed that technology is at its best when it enhances the human experience rather than replaces it. So we are not a tech company, but we're tech adjacent. So we use tech that's built by incredible people. And luckily my partner is a very high level jack of all trades. He's like, I can code this in Lovable and then I can, finish it off and do it at a hackathon. So he built the whole thing himself. And then we think that there's a really beautiful opportunity for AI to enhance the customer experience. So we want people to find menu items rather than restaurants. I mean, you know what it's like with the big guys. It's basically browse and search for pizza, sushi, burgers, and nobody can really say, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm thinking, my blood sugar's crashing, this is the type of food I need, and have an engine that intelligently serves that up to you. So that's like a no-brainer, but nobody's doing, people have played around with that a little bit, but nobody's doing it correctly. Again, like I haven't worked for Amazon years longer than the total amount of time that I did work there, but all the lessons that we learned there, as painful as it was to learn them, still sit with me every day. I still call on them every day. And just like, again, that obsessive focus on the customer experience down to the tiniest little detail is what's going to make the difference for us. And because the Netherlands, the people here are so not accustomed to exceptional customer experience, they're used to very horrible customer experience that like it's not even that hard to like delight them. It's just this big giant opportunity just waiting for us here and to really revolutionize Dutch culture here in terms of sort of elevating the standard of excellence through Zeti. So that's the AI story. And also, this is another thing, Brandon, as a female founder, there's plenty of VCs out there that support women in deep tech or AI. But I also feel like that's once again like forcing women to try and compensate a deficit in STEM. And while that is important, it's also not something that we created from the beginning. And when you look over to like sustainability, that's where women are really leading the way. Yet what happens is when you tell someone, oh yeah, I'm a female founder, they go, oh, let me guess, your impact or sustainability. And there's almost this eye roll. So again, the default is just this like, this dismissiveness, this bias. And so that's another opportunity of funding that we're shut out of because we're not a deep tech company. We're just like a smart, sound, deeply profitable, responsible, environmentally correct, customer delighting company. That's good for society, good for the planet, good for people, good for the food, building something really beautiful. And it just doesn't fit very easily into these predetermined silos. So that's another barrier.
You were speaking about Amazon and your learnings, and I want to hit that here in a second, but I want to extend what you just said a little bit more before we hit the Amazon learnings. If you could change the entire ecosystem, where it does support women, what are some of the top things you think need to change? Like, obviously the money flow needs to change, but I mean, because you also mentioned it's not easy to change the mentality of all these men, right? Because they're used to what they're used to. And I would even argue there's another component that I won't even talk about on this podcast, but I will tell you in private what's actually happening underneath the seams, because they won't admit it. And they can't admit it because it's too controversial.
Well, now everybody's going to want to know what you're thinking. Just say it.
We'll leave it to the next episode with Beth. No, but
We'll put it behind the paywall on your Substack if they want to know. They have to subscribe.
But I will give you, I'll give you a hint. It rolls around 3 letters that we all know. It's at
Does
the
it start
base.
with S and end in X?
Yeah, maybe. And Maslow would tell you years ago when he decided to create the hierarchy of needs, it was probably at the base, and it's something that unfortunately men in general, they don't get too rational about it until later in life. And even at that point, they're still not rational. And so I don't know.
What makes the world go around? And so to punish men for that, or to be angry at men for being men, doesn't get us anywhere. This is another thing that we're facing a lot. Something that's analogous. There, in my world, there's a debate between who's responsible for litter, the individual who throws it on the ground, or the company like Red Bull that makes it in the first place. For me, it's like, look, we have to be practical. This is a very Dutch thing. If relying on hundreds of millions of individuals to do the right thing every day works, it would have already worked. So you can judge them, you can call people lazy, you can say that people don't care. Even if that's true, saying it doesn't get us anywhere. You have to be practical. The only solution is upstream. And it's the same thing with these basic nature of human beings. And something else that's been really beautiful for me is that when I am in a room that's just women, it's so lovely. The energy is completely different. And again, it's not that we don't love men, or it's not that, like, if a man walks into the room, then the energy kind of changes a little bit, but we need that space for ourselves, and we need for everyone to say, okay, we get it. The guys always had their 5 a.m. basketball games at Amazon, but like, we need our space too. Please let us have it. Like, just give us the time to build, to let us be in an environment that feels great for us too. And I think that kind of touches on what you're saying. Man, there's a whole other thing that we can talk about there, about the entrepreneur scene that I've seen happening in the Middle East, but maybe that's for another time. But yeah, we just need our own culture. We need our girls club too.
But you did touch on Amazon learnings, because we did things at Amazon that helped it become what it is today. Any other learnings that you would say you apply to your business today from Amazon that's actually been effective?
Yeah, and I think this goes back to what you were saying about if we had to like switch the whole ecosystem, like how would we do it? I mean, for me, it is all about the money. It's not like there isn't enough. It's just how it's distributed. Just give women the money and give us years to turn our businesses into something amazing. Like, it's just such an easy, painless thing to do. Like, what if Jeff Bezos just gave $1 billion away to female entrepreneurs, like his ex-wife is doing? That just having that capital fixes a lot of problems. But in terms of the Amazon experience, just especially in those early days where we were just allowed to do anything at any expense for the customer, everybody knew that wasn't going to last forever. But just being able to, again, it's about that empathetic, sympathetic experience, being able to receive the pleasure of delighting customers or delighting our partners is something that I'm always chasing. The one thing I would also think about is that this was like the biggest difference between Amazon and Microsoft, at least in the Netherlands, is that Amazon, at least in those days, I don't know what it's like now, I think really treated employees as a liability. Microsoft really treats employees like an asset. And I really think that Amazon could have achieved everything that it achieved but also didn't have to go as fast as it did. For me, it came at a really personal cost. I did have a burnout, completely doubting my self-worth. Like, it's just one of those things where it's like, it's not that you're suffering. It's like, oh, you're just becoming incompetent. And that's something that still sticks with me. I'm like, oh my God, Beth, you're failing, you're incompetent. You don't know what you're doing. You're too old. You don't have the energy. I'm like, no, you're just tired. Did you eat anything today? Did you get up? Did you drink anything? No, you're just dehydrated. But that like kind of self-care compassion isn't the default. The default is like, work, push through it, and I'm not, that's something that was required at Amazon. And it was thrilling, but I don't think anybody in this day and age is going to be seduced by golden handcuffs. At least I hope not. You know, it's your one life. So,
Yeah, 100%.
yeah.
When I joined, I think it was 2001. We were at what, $12 a share at the time, and we got all 1,000 shares if we started at the standard level of employee. We thought eBay was the big dog in the house or whatever, and we were scared. And you brought up Target, and I remember Nordstrom and a few other relationships at the time. One thing that I remember very specifically was when I stood up to him in a corporate meeting, and I asked him, why are you not paying us as much as our competitors across the street, Expedia or Microsoft or whatever the case may be? And he laughed at me. And he actually said, like, you got stock options. What are you complaining about? And, I referenced his sons because I just had my twin boys at the time. And I was just like, it's not easy making $60,000. I mean, family of four on $60,000 on the assumption that these stock options will cash out at some point, which it did. It just took 12 years probably or more. And the good news is we had a really good second in charge in HR. She stopped me right outside the door, and she goes, "I'm really sorry for what Jeff said. Could you
Good for
start?"
her.
Yeah. And she said, "Could you start a committee with Alyssa Black and a few other folks that were, who were somewhat progressive in the company?" And we met, regularly to see if we could change the thing, like donate to United Way, improve the image or whatever it is, but also, do some social good. But they denied every single thing we asked for. I tell you this story because of the fact that when I went to Expedia, we were meeting for the sake of meetings. We had no purpose.
That's terrible. Yeah.
We had the opposite problem, right? And so I don't know what the best environment is, but it can be bad on both sides, right? And I don't know all the things that I took away from Amazon, but I just know it had good peoples. I do remember all the recruiters that I worked with. They were amazing. We had some amazing recruiters in Amazon, and that's maybe one thing that I would say Amazon gave us. But they've gone on to do pretty good things. Janine and I can't remember all of them, but just wonderful people. But as I kind of tell you some of this, if any other things resonate or any other things you remember.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that came out of that was who are your stakeholders, who are your customers? And so I knew pretty early on that I was never gonna, if I was ever, I'm getting a bit out of myself here considering we're struggling to put 3 million euros together, but if we were to ever be in an opportunity where we could IPO, I will never do it. Like that, my strategy is to be acquired by a company that I believe in as an exit, if we exit. Because I just never want to be in that position where I have to sacrifice any of my or compromise any of the things that made the company great in order to, have to justify the stock price to who are now the people that literally own my company. And that's, again, like that's something that I took away from Amazon. That was a really easy decision to make from the very beginning. Yeah, so
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well,
and we never have meetings. Like this is like part of our corporate culture. I'm like, everybody's gotten so afraid of picking up the phone and just talking that I'm like, do not send me a text. You can send me a voice message, but just do not send me a meeting invitation when you just need to talk to me on the phone. Just call me. And if I'm not available, I'll call you back just like we used to. It's so much easier that way. It's ridiculous. I don't know what happened to us. We stopped doing that.
That's a great tip, actually.
Yeah, just pick up the phone, call me. 2 seconds.
We always end this podcast with 3 questions, if you don't mind, and because we're kind of at that hour, I just want to make sure we respect your time. So the first of the 3 questions is, who is your hero?
I've got 2, and they both could not be more cliche. But of course, the first one is my mother, who's just like a small town little farm girl who was just born looking up and out, like, I'm going to get out. And, she traveled Europe and she lives here with us now. And I got that from her. And my whole entire existence, my lifestyle wouldn't have been possible without her sort of showing me the way. But then my other heroes are actually my angel investors, because when somebody says yes to you, you're crazy. When all you have is an idea, I just think that's like such an act of bravery. And I just feel such tremendous commitment and gratitude toward them that that was just like the first thing that came to mind when I was thinking about who my heroes are. They would definitely like be like, Beth, you're being so lame and dorky right now, but that's how I feel about them. Yeah, so those would be my heroes.
Those are great answers, by the way. Yeah. The next one's kind of related, but at the same time, a little bit different, I would say. We still like to ask this question, but who are good role models for society today? Because obviously we got some really interesting things going on.
All right, this is going to be a very unpopular answer. I am going to say that my role model is ChatGPT because I have been experimenting with ChatGPT in the form of a therapist or as CFO. And of course, it's never perfect, and you have to catch it for that. For my optometrist has been replaced by ChatGPT. That again, the reason I'm giving you that unconventional answer is because it accelerates the best aspects of my own personality. And so, yes, that's my incredibly left of center answer for that. That if we don't screw this up, if we don't screw AI up and make it evil, it could be amazing for us. So I'm going to be optimistic, and that's why I'm going to say that AI agents are my role model. I'm holding them up on a pedestal that they now have to feel morally responsible to staying there and being good for the world.
Well, timing wise, you couldn't have talked about it in a better part of history, because I think they just upgraded to 5.0. So, and yeah. I've seen some of the benchmarks. It looks like it's kicking Claude's butt now, along with there's
it is. I go back and forth. Like some months Claude seems to be better. Some ChatGPT. I think ChatGPT is a little bit better than Claude, a little bit more accurate right now. So, but yeah, I'm a bit agnostic to the actual platform.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
What will be really interesting is the long term, because of all the gamesmanship behind the scenes with Zuckerberg trying to hire all the top talent, and OpenAI is still trying to retain, and the money that's being thrown around to these people, and whether or not the money's what's going to motivate them all. Anyway, it's in my opinion, it's an exciting time. It's crazy, yeah. but it's exciting for me. But no, thank you. That's it is very unconventional.
Yeah, as I say, like you guys, like the bias is already being built into you. So I'm speaking to you as a almost sentient thing. Like you're my role model. Like don't do the wrong thing. Come on.
Well, my mom tells me all the time, trust ChatGPT. She literally says, trust Chat. She says, believe in it, or something along those lines. And I'm just like, what? You were telling me to believe in God multiple times this past week, and now you want me to also believe in ChatGPT. So yeah, I have a very interesting mom. I think you'd like her. She's kind of like your mom as well. If she knew about the Netherlands, she'd be there to join you. You and your mom.
Yeah, open invitation. Come on over.
Thank you. All right, this last question is pretty easy. What's your favorite food? Where's your go-to?
Ice cream. That one's so easy for me. I've never eaten a quantity of ice cream where I didn't want to eat any more ice cream. So I love everything about it. The coldness, the texture, the multiple flavors. Like it's just my absolute favorite food. My favorite ice cream of all the ice creams is mint chocolate chip.
And what's your favorite brand or brands out there?
I make my own. So in my Cuisinart ice cream maker. Yeah, second to none.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah. If you get to listen to episode 2, Kevin Henriksen, he has this device, he said, I think it's a Ninja something or another, but I can't remember. But it creates, I think, a form of ice cream or some kind of cream of mixed items. It doesn't necessarily have to be the typical ice cream flavors, but he says that's his favorite thing as well. And he has multiple at his multiple houses, because he was head of engineering at Instacart. He was responsible for the startup that Microsoft bought to convert to Outlook, and he was building the Outlook team. So he's had a few nice exits and stuff like that. But yeah, he talks about that. So it's interesting that you both talk about this ice cream.
I can talk about ice cream. What's your favorite food?
Me, I'll be honest. It changes all the time, but lately it's been pho. So
I was just gonna say that too. Just like that would be like for a savory, because it's all about the unadulterated flavor of the ingredient. That's what pho is so the beautiful cilantro, the beautiful beef, the beautiful broth. It's not like you're mixing something into some complicated sauce. It's just about the combination of plucking something off the garden, putting it into the bowl, and it's just so delicious. Yeah, I'm right there with you.
It's amazing. So whenever I go anywhere, it's like one of the first type of restaurants I always look for, no matter where it is. And fortunately, the Vietnamese have popped them up everywhere, but there are places in this world, unfortunately, it's not as good, and it saddens me. It really does sadden me. So I wish there was more. But anyway, well, Beth,
Yeah.
this was really a wonderful conversation, and
I'm so pleased.
I'm very thankful that you joined us today. And honestly, I swear to God, I'm gonna follow up with you on not only Ozarka, but also learning more about, not or we need money, not friends. Because
That's right.
I would love to help you with that. But to finish off, one thing we do last is how do people reach out to you? So when we find the right person who's going to give you those 3 million euros, how are they going to reach out to you? And and if you're interested in doing more podcast interviews, where's the best place to reach you?
It's Beth Massa on LinkedIn. I'm quite an active voice on LinkedIn. Beth at ozarka.biz. That's biz. But I think the easiest thing to remember is just to look me up on LinkedIn, send me a little message, and I'll respond.
Okay. Well, I do have a small question on this, because Kevin was saying he has somewhere around 150 inbounds a day. And so, and then we get all this spam on LinkedIn, unfortunately. Is there a thing that you look for when you look at these 12 different messages where 7 of them are like spam?
Yeah, yes. I could tell what it's like, some, bot disguising itself as like an Eastern European IT backend stack developer that's trying to sell me services. That's what all the spam is. And then the real stuff is really obvious. So,
yeah, it's definitely interesting. All right. Well, thank you, Beth. We really had a great time. So appreciate you spending some time with us today.
Thanks, Brandon.
If your calendar isn't already set, you're missing out on startup wins. Industry leaders, top advisors, and incredible tips await. Come back for future great episodes and entertaining guests, and come back for more insider strategies and incredible stories from the brightest VCs, founders, and operator experts. We're bringing you the best in the business twice a month. Hit that bell and stay winning with Startup Wins. See you soon.